Okay, so you know the music in a huge video game boss battle or like the most intense scene in an action movie? Well, we're going to talk about the guy who basically invented the feel of all of that. And trust me, it's not who you think.
Seriously, just think about it for a sec. That moment where your heart starts pounding and you're on the edge of your seat, and the music is just huge. What exactly is it in the music that's doing that?
Well, it all comes down to the rhythm. That's the secret sauce. And the wild part is, this guy, Béla Bartók, basically wrote the rulebook for it more than 100 years ago. He totally changed the game by digging into the past. So let's set the scene. Bartók was born in Hungary, way back in 1881. He was a musical genius, for sure, but he looked around at the classical music of his time and thought, man, this is getting kinda predictable, kinda boring. He knew music needed a serious refresh, something more raw and exciting. So instead of just writing the same old stuff, he went on this epic quest. You can think of it like a real-life open-world game, but instead of collecting treasure or rare items, he was out there hunting for music's hidden power-ups, these super old folk songs. And I'm not talking about just sitting in a library. This dude was literally out in the field. He traveled to these tiny villages with this clunky early recording machine, a phonograph, and get local people to sing their traditional songs. He was capturing these powerful, unique rhythms that the fancy concert halls had never even heard of. And get this, he wasn't messing around. Over his lifetime, he collected and studied more than 10,000 of these songs. 10,000. That's an insane amount of data. He basically built this incredible library of music that was hundreds of years old. So, digging through all this music, Bartók started to find what was basically a secret code. He discovered these rhythms that didn't play by the normal steady rules. They were wild, they were energetic, and they were completely unpredictable. And he was like, okay, I gotta hack this. So what's the difference? Well, most music back then had a really simple beat, like a march. 1, 2, 3, 4. Super predictable. But the folk music Bartók was finding had these awesome, kind of glitchy beats. They were more like a surprising dance, maybe something like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It kind of trips you up, you know? It keeps you on your toes. One of his key tools was this thing called syncopation. Sounds complicated, but it's not. It just means putting the emphasis on the offbeat, the beat you don't expect. The basketball analogy here is perfect. It's like a crossover dribble, that unexpected move that fakes out the defender and creates all the excitement. Bartók basically built whole symphonies around that feeling. But here's the thing. Bartók didn't just keep these ideas on paper. He unleashed them on the entire orchestra. He treated it less like a single group and more like an epic multiplayer team, where every section has its own important mission. Here's kind of how he built it up, layer by layer. First, you got the strings, the violins and cellos. He'd give them this super fast, driving rhythm that basically acts as the engine for the whole piece. It just pushes everything forward. Then, on top of that engine, he'd add the woodwinds, like the flutes and clarinets. But he'd have them play a completely different rhythm, something choppy and uneven. So right away, you've got this awesome tension between the two sections. And finally, he'd bring in the heavy hitters, the drums and percussion. He gave them a massive role, having them pound out these really powerful syncopated rhythms that just locked everything together with pure force. So just think about that. You've got all these different sections of the orchestra playing conflicting, complex rhythms all at once. I mean, it should have been a complete mess, right? But it wasn't. Instead, it created this incredibly rich, powerful, and intense sound, something no one had ever really heard from an orchestra before. And this wasn't just some weird, forgotten experiment. Bartók's innovations, his musical power-ups, they actually became a core part of the language of modern music. No, seriously, his rhythmic DNA is everywhere, from modern classical music to, those epic movie soundtracks. You can hear it in experimental jazz, in progressive rock, and absolutely in the scores for your favorite video games. That huge epic feeling, you can pretty much thank Bartók for it. If you want to hear the source code for yourself, you've got to check out his famous pieces like Concerto for Orchestra. They are just absolute masterclasses in using rhythm to create pure energy and raw emotion. So here's the main takeaway. The most important thing to remember is this. Bartók was the original remix artist. He looked back at these ancient folk songs, sampled them, and invented a sound that would define intensity for the next 100 years. And that leaves us with just one last thought. If Bartók were around today, doing his thing,
What modern sounds do you think he'd be sampling? What beats would he be hacking to create the next sound of the future? Something to think about.